Hi, it's Sandra here from Creating Spain, and today I wanted to show you how to use watercolour pencils to do distressing. Now, if you have distress inks, that's great. If you don't, but you have a set of watercolour pencils, such as these, you might have some alternatives. In fact, even if you do have distress inks, and if you have these in more colours, this will open opportunities to you that perhaps you didn't realise. Now I have here a piece of watercolour paper. It's relatively, well, it is cheap, cheerful watercolour paper. It's not very thick and doesn't absorb an awful lot of water without getting really wet and soggy. And I'm using a very dark colour simply because, in fact this is black, simply because it'll make it easier for you to actually see what I'm doing, because if I use one of the paler colours the camera may not pick it up too well. Now I'm working on a table mat basically. It's just a plastic mat, so it's old and it's not going to absorb any of the colour itself, but I'm going to be able to use this to put my watercolour down. Now I have a pot of water and I'm just going to dip my pencil in the water and just do some scribbling by the side of my watercolour paper and put down a reasonable amount of colour. There we go. I have a piece of bath sponge that I've just ripped off, and then you can pick up the colour with the sponge and you simply use it in the same way that you would any other distress ink. Now that is the first version, but you will notice that there is a little bit of pilling perhaps on the edges, and that may not be quite good enough for the results that you want. I'm going to turn it over and use the other side. Now again, I'm going to dip my pencil into the water and put down some colour, like so. There we go. But in this particular case, I'm going to take a drop of glycerin. I'm just going to put one drop, that's it, only the one, on top of that. Pick up another side of my sponge so that it is a different side to the one I was previously using. And again, I'm going to get all that colour into my sponge. And now I'm going to do the distressing on this side. There we go. Now when you do that, you tend to get less pilling. There's something in the glycerin that helps the sponge move over the surface of the paper, and you don't tend to get as much pilling with that as you do with the original version that doesn't have the glycerin. Now you can also use something like this. This is used for DIY, and it's one of these flat paint sponges that you can get, and this is the one that is the smallest one out of a complete set, and you can also use that to apply. And I'm going to change to a different colour. Again, I'm going to choose a relatively dark one because otherwise you won't be able to see it. And I'm going to put it down here now. So what you're looking for is a fair amount of colour put on the mat, but you don't want it to look wet. Okay. And again, one drop of glycerin. Pick it up on my brush. And there we go, distressed. Now, because of the number of colours that you get watercolour pencils in. I mean, you have a lot of different variety, and obviously you can use watercolour pencils for other things as well. So, you know, if you don't want to buy specialty distress inks, this may be an alternative that you would be prepared to try out. Now, the other thing that I do as well that works in the same way is using these memento ones, which I have for stamping. And these are quite good too. And what you would do with these, and I will just take a baby wipe a second and clean off my surface, because I don't want to mess up my inks. So I'll just clean that off. There we go, take that off. And just dry it off with a piece of kitchen roll. There we go. Don't want to mess up the inks that I like. And what you can do is put 2 blobs of those down, and again 1 drop, 2 blobs of the inks, 1 blob only of the glycerin, and then pick up all that colour on the sponge, move it around until it's well absorbed, and you can do the same thing with those. Now, if I try and do it without the glycerin, I end up with a lot of pilling on the card or the paper, whatever I'm using, and it tears it up and it doesn't really work. If you try doing it with this and you spray with water and you do it, you'll end up with a much wetter result. I got an example here somewhere. I think I have somewhere. Where have I got an example? Ah, here we go. This is the sort of effect that you'll get. So you get harsh edges. So you don't want it to be wet. You want it to be relatively dry. But you just need that little bit of glycerin in order for it to be able to spread. So if you're using a pencil, dip it in water and then scribble and then add your glycerin. If you're using these, just add 1 drop of glycerin to 2 stamps with the ink pad, and then you will have a method of doing your distressing without buying distress inks. Okay. Right, one other thing that I wanted to show you is my method for adding a little bit of shimmer and shine. I have in here what I call my shimmer bottle. I have in here some acrylic iridescent medium, and I put in about that much in the bottom and filled it up with water. And then when you've shaken it up with a couple of ball bearings inside, it mixes up nicely, and you can just put a couple of drops on your mat, and you can use a sponge in the same way, absorb all that, and you can just sponge it over your item, and you will get a very delicate shimmer to it. You probably can't see it in this light, but in artificial lights in the evening you would see it. You just get a very delicate shimmer. So there we go. That's it. Thanks for watching. Take care now. Bye bye.